Antonio Brown has very quickly become that guy that is that crazy ex that you try to tell everybody about and they didn't believe you. And because they were so great, right? They were wonderful. They were amazing. There were all these phenomenal qualities about them. And then they started doing all this other stuff, and slowly but surely people went, oh, okay. I see why you were willing to break it off with them, you know? Because on the exterior, everything looks great about Antonio Brown. We know who he is athletically and who he is as a wide receiver. There's no mistake about that. One of the things that I talked about when Antonio Brown was, and Odell Beckham Jr. and all these guys to the, when they started, getting traded and taking different deals with different teams is what it's going to be like in a locker room. And you don't know what it's like with a guy until you've been in the locker room with him, until you've been in game situations with him, until you see how they really are. And all of a sudden, and for a while I was entertained by Antonio Brown, but now it's just gotten to a point where it's really out of control. And he still is doing kind of things that are funny, right? Like you put that picture up where it's like contemplating, and he's just sitting there thinking to himself. Like, that's funny, bro. That's real funny, but some of this other stuff, man, with him and Juju Smith, I don't get it. What's your deal with Juju, man? I mean, look, if he's trying to point out and say that Juju's going to have it, a far more difficult time shining as a receiver now because he's going to be the number one guy instead of the number two guy, and he's going to have a different breed of defender on top of him, and defenses are going to account for him in a different way, well, then that's one thing. But the way he's going about it is just completely wrong. Completely wrong, and then he put up that, because Juju, let me backtrack here. Antonio Brown was going in on Juju for having fumbleitis, basically, right? Case of the Butterfingers. And by the way, statistically, Antonio Brown had more fumbles than Juju did. But the point is that he went in on him for it. And it's like, why? Everybody, every athlete knows what it's like already, because guys like me and panelists and everybody else sit around dissecting every single thing that you do. Coaches, panelists, friends, assistant coaches, head coaches, trainers, guys with all their new equipment now. And you've got a whole new way of looking at things with athletics in terms of what they do. It's not really even about your mechanics anymore, as opposed to it's mathematics. It really is a mathematics game now. And so for Antonio Brown as an athlete to know what it's like to be under that kind of scrutiny and to call out another athlete like that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think Juju did the right thing and said, why are you doing this? I've done nothing but show you respect. And then, of course, Antonio then goes out and puts up an Instagram post from when Juju was still at USC, and Antonio showed where Juju was like, hey, man, you're a hard worker. I got respect for you. What can I do to get to the next level? That's a kid that's reaching out to somebody that he looks up to and then ends up playing on that same team with them. And it's amazing to me that Odell Beckham Jr. catches so much hell for allegedly not being a team guy. But yet when he left, all Saquon Barkley could talk about was how he was still big brother, how he was one-on-one FaceTime with him, how he was just giving him advice on how to handle situations like this when they come up. And we're seeing two different people in Odell Beckham Jr. and Antonio Brown. And I think that we're seeing a much more team-oriented guy in Odell Beckham Jr., who's not going on social media everywhere and bashing the New York Giants, who's not all over the place saying this and that. He's dropped a couple of things, but he's not going out of control with it. And he talked about how New York will always be his home, and he really loved the fans there, and, he's going to be a Giant for life in some respect. It's just a completely different way of handling things. And to see that, and to see what Antonio Brown is doing, You know, it's kind of like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, are you getting tips from McGregor now? What are you doing? Are you promoting a fight somewhere? Are you amping yourself up? Is he giving himself like some sort of sense of people are out to get him? Is that what he's doing? Like, when has anybody ever been out to get Antonio Brown? When has anybody been on Antonio Brown's head? Because everybody knows that Antonio Brown is probably the best wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, at the bare minimum, top 3. I mean, you got what? Him, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., right? I mean, come on. Legitimately, what is, like, and if that's the case, then how is he just not already self-motivated, right? Because as an athlete, isn't that what you are? You're self-motivated. Sometimes you've got, you know, a background story that gives you all the motivation that you need psychologically to, you know, you're fighting for basically your family to have a better life, for yourself to have a better life, for your friends to have a better quality of life. I mean, you've got something to aim for, and yet that doesn't seem like what Antonio Brown is fighting for anymore. It used to be. Now it seems more like Antonio Brown is just being weird, man. He's being that weird ex who thinks that they've upgraded, right? What do? They're bitter. They still want to be with you, right? Deep down inside. And they've used somebody else to try to make you jealous. It's almost like what he's doing with the Raiders or something. Like he's trying to make the Pittsburgh Steelers jealous by using Derek Carr, and, you know, he's all over Instagram. DC, throw it to me. I'm wide open, bro. And pictures of him and John Gruden about how he's getting, you know, tips from a different coaching mind and all this other stuff. And it's just like, where are you? You know, it's like that bad ex who gets with another person, right? And then they're all over social media. They're taking pictures with them, and they're out on dates, and me and Babe, we're hanging out and all this stuff. And what's really going on is deep down inside, they wish they hadn't have blown it with you. And that's exactly what this reminds me of, man. So I don't know. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out. But, you know, as far as Antonio Brown goes, just probably a good idea to stop for a little while, bro. Just kill the noise, man. Kill it. So in the meantime, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. YouTube is simply Drew Duncan. Don't forget, when you share this post, to use the hashtag Don't You Dare Touch That Dial. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.